Right now, somewhere behind you, there might be nothing at all, but your shoulders just tightened anyway. You felt it before you read this sentence, that tiny prickle at the back of your neck. You didn't choose it. You didn't decide to feel it. It just happened. The same way it happened to a human being 50,000 years ago standing at the edge of a dark tree line. You think that feeling belongs to your imagination. It doesn't. It belongs to your ancestors. Your brain was not built for offices, screens, or quiet bedrooms. It was built for survival on an open landscape full of teeth, and it never got the memo that the landscape changed. Here's the strange part. You walk through life believing you're a calm, rational creature making careful decisions. But underneath that belief, an ancient alarm system is still running, scanning every room you enter, every sound you hear, every shadow that moves slightly wrong. It never stopped working. It just went quiet enough for you to ignore it. Anthropologists call this the legacy of a predator rich environment. For most of human history, you were not the only hunter on the savannah. You were also prey. Big cats, hyenas, and other large carnivores treated early hominins as a viable meal, and the humans who survived were not the strongest or the fastest. They were the most alert. Think about what that means for a second. Alertness was not a personality trait back then. It was the difference between living and not living. So evolution did something ruthless and brilliant. It rewired the brain to treat uncertainty as danger by default. Better safe than dead, after all. This shows up today in something researchers call hypervigilance to ambiguous threat. Psychologist David Buss has written extensively about how the human mind evolved specific threat detection systems that fire long before conscious reasoning catches up. You don't think your way into fear. Fear arrives first. Thinking arrives late, almost as a justification for what your body already decided. Have you ever walked into an empty parking garage at night and felt your pace quicken without meaning to? That's not anxiety malfunctioning. That's a system functioning exactly as designed. Your amygdala, the almond-shaped structure deep in your brain, is the descendant of a survival tool. It doesn't care about your calendar or your deadline. It cares about one question only. Is this safe? And it asks that question constantly, quietly, underneath every single thing you do. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux spent decades studying this exact structure. His research showed that the amygdala can trigger a fear response before the rest of your brain even finishes identifying what you're looking at. A shadow shaped like a person, a sound shaped like footsteps. Your body reacts to the shape of danger before your mind confirms whether danger is actually there. This is why a rustling bush still makes you flinch even though you know logically that there are no leopards in your neighborhood. Logic is recent. Vigilance is ancient. Consider how strange this is. You can hold a smartphone capable of accessing nearly all human knowledge, and in the same moment, flinch at a flickering light the same way a hunter-gatherer flinched at movement in tall grass. Two timelines colliding in one nervous system. So why does this matter now? In a world with locks, lights, and emergency services, because your environment changed far faster than your biology did. Evolution moves across thousands of generations. Civilization moved in a few hundred years. Your brain simply hasn't caught up, and it probably won't anytime soon. This mismatch has a name. Researchers refer to it as evolutionary mismatch, the gap between the environment your body expects and the environment you actually live in. Anthropologist Sarah Hrdy has explored how deeply human psychology was shaped by small, dangerous, interdependent groups, not the large anonymous cities most people live in today. Your nervous system still expects a tribe. It still expects threats with teeth. Instead, it gets emails and traffic and notifications, and it treats many of them with the same intensity it once reserved for predators. That's why a tense email from your boss can trigger a real physical stress response. Heart rate increasing, palms sweating, stomach tightening. Nothing is chasing you, yet your body responds as if something is. You don't get to opt out of this system. You only get to understand it. Here's where it gets even stranger. This hypervigilance isn't only about danger, it's also about people. For most of human history, your survival depended on your group. Being excluded from the group wasn't just emotionally painful, it was often a death sentence. No tribe meant no protection, no food sharing, no safety in numbers. So your brain evolved to treat social rejection with the same urgency as physical danger. Psychologist Naomi Eisenberger's research using brain imaging found that social exclusion activates regions overlapping with those that process physical pain. Heartbreak isn't just a metaphor. Your brain genuinely processes it as injury. This is why a single unanswered text message can spiral your thoughts into worst case scenarios. Why one negative comment can outweigh 10 compliments. Why silence from someone you care about can feel unbearable. You are not overreacting. You are running code that was written for a world where being ignored by your group could mean starvation. Modern life keeps this ancient alarm constantly busy. Crowded social media feeds insert hundreds of strangers into a brain that evolved to track maybe 150 people, a number popularized by anthropologist Robin Dunbar as the typical size of a functioning human social group. Now you're tracking thousands of opinions, comparisons, and potential judgments every single day. Your alert system was never built for this scale, yet it tries to keep up anyway, exhausting itself in the process. This is also why doom scrolling feels almost magnetic. Negative news hijacks the same threat detection circuitry that once watched for predators. Bad news used to mean immediate local danger. Now it means global danger delivered nonstop. But your brain still reacts to each headline like it's standing at the edge of that ancient tree line. You were built for a world with a few dozen relationships and a handful of real threats. You now live in a world with infinite relationships and infinite information, and your prehistoric alarm system tries to process all of it using tools designed for a much smaller, much slower world. So, what do you do with a brain like this? You don't fight it, you work with it. Understanding that your fear response is ancient, not irrational, changes how you respond to it. The tightness in your chest before a presentation isn't weakness. It's a survival circuit misfiring in a context it was never designed for. The unease in a quiet, empty space isn't a personal flaw. It's a feature passed down through hundreds of thousands of years of human survival. Once you see this pattern, you start noticing it everywhere. The way certain sounds make you tense before you even register why. The way you scan a room when you enter it, almost without thinking. The way silence sometimes feels louder than noise. None of this is broken. All of it is inherited. And maybe that's the real twist. You walk around believing you're a modern person living a modern life, but your nervous system is still living in the past, scanning for movement in the grass, listening for footsteps in the dark, watching the corners of every room you enter. There's another layer to this that most people never stop to consider. Your hypervigilance doesn't just react to danger, it actively goes looking for it. Cognitive scientists call this a negativity bias, a built-in tendency to notice, remember, and weigh negative information more heavily than positive information. Psychologist Roy Baumeister and his colleagues reviewed decades of research on this pattern and found something remarkable. Bad experiences influence you more strongly, more quickly, and for longer than good ones do across nearly every area of human life. Why would evolution build a brain that leans toward the negative? Because the math of survival was never symmetrical. If you missed a chance to eat a piece of fruit, you could try again tomorrow. If you missed the sign of a predator, there might not be a tomorrow. So your ancestors who paid closer attention to threats than to rewards were the ones who lived long enough to pass on that exact tendency. You inherited a brain that is quite literally built to expect the worst because expecting the worst used to keep people alive. This explains so much of what feels like modern anxiety but is actually ancient math. You remember the one harsh comment in a sea of kindness. You replay the awkward moment from years ago more vividly than the hundreds of normal, unremarkable days surrounding it. You brace yourself for bad news before you even open the message. None of this is a personality flaw. It's a threat detection system doing exactly what it was built to do, just aimed at a world that rarely contains the dangers it's still searching for. Even your sense of time bends around this ancient wiring. Notice how a single tense, threatening moment can feel like it stretches on forever, while an entire pleasant afternoon can blur past in what feels like minutes. Researchers studying fear and perception have found that the brain allocates more attention and therefore more perceived time to moments it interprets as dangerous. Your ancestors needed every possible millisecond of awareness when a predator was. You inherited that same temporal stretching, even when the only thing threatening you is an uncomfortable conversation or a looming deadline. There's a physical dimension to all of this, too, one you can feel directly. When your ancient alarm system activates, it doesn't just affect your thoughts, it floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline, the same hormonal response your ancestors needed to either fight a threat or run from it. Your heart rate climbs, your muscles tense, your senses sharpen. This response, often called the fight or flight reaction, was first formally described by physiologist Walter Cannon in the early 20th century, but its roots stretch back far earlier than any laboratory. The problem is that fight or flight was designed for short bursts of intense physical danger, not for sitting at a desk worrying about a project for 8 straight hours. Your body still produces the same chemical flood it always has, but you rarely get to use it the way it was meant to be used. There's no predator to run from, no physical threat to fight. So the energy has nowhere to go. It just sits in your body, tightening your shoulders, clenching your jaw, keeping you awake at 3 in the morning, replaying a conversation that happened hours ago. This is also why physical movement so reliably calms an anxious mind. When you go for a walk after a stressful day, you're not just distracting yourself. You're giving your body the one thing it has been asking for the entire time, a way to discharge the ancient survival energy it built up with nowhere else to put it. Once you understand this, certain modern habits start to make a strange kind of sense. The reason horror movies are entertaining instead of unbearable is that your brain gets to practice its threat detection system in a completely safe environment, experiencing the thrill of danger with none of the actual risk. The reason true crime content has exploded in popularity is that it lets your ancient vigilance scan for danger patterns from the safety of your couch. You are constantly looking for a version of the world your ancestors lived in, even while living in a world that no longer requires that kind of constant scanning. Maybe the most important thing to understand is that none of this makes you fragile or broken. It makes you the product of an unbroken chain of ancestors who survived long enough to have children, who survived long enough to have children, stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. Every flinch, every prickle on the back of your neck, every moment of unexplained unease is a small, quiet inheritance from every single one of them. You don't need to silence this system. You simply need to recognize it for what it is. Not a malfunction, but a message from a much older version of yourself. One that walked across open grassland with no walls, no locks, and no guarantee of safety beyond its own awareness. Tonight, when you turn off the lights and feel that small flicker of unease in the dark, you're not imagining. You're remembering, not with your mind, but with the oldest part of your body, still quietly convinced that somewhere out there, something might still be hunting you.